Yeah, what's your
Anybody?
time? Electrician.
Mayor? With the Red Bull, I will call this meeting to order for the Board of Commissioners for the town of Pittsboro, Monday, October the 10th, 2022. We'll begin our meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. We're adding a little bit to the agenda tonight in that we are going to introduce the board and the staff who are here. And I don't know why we've never done that before, because you all need to know who we are and keep track of what we're doing. So starting over here, this is Commissioner Jay Farrell. Jay, how long have you been on the board?
11 years.
And next to him is Kyle Shipp. Kyle, how many years have you been with us?
3.
And Commissioner James Vose is here. This is his first year.
Yes, it is.
I'm Cindy Perry, and this is my third term as mayor of Pittsboro.
I am Pamela Baldwin, and I've been a commissioner since 2005.
And I'm John Bonitz, and I'm starting my 7th year. I guess I'm 6.5 years now.
At the table here, we have our interim town manager, Hazen Blodgett, and has just come in, Paul Misc, our town attorney, and Carrie Bailey, our town clerk. Behind here, we have Shorty Johnson, our chief of police. We have Teresa Thompson, who's in charge of downtown Pittsboro zoning and planning and other issues like that. She and I are now sharing an office at 79 Hillsborough Street. And so come by and see us there. Janie Phillips from the planning department is here. Morgan DeWitt is here with us from engineering, and Katie Keller from Parks and Recreation. I think that's got it. And so thank you for coming this evening. Do we have any staff online? Okay. And with that, Jay Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, America, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. The agenda is before you. Are there any modifications to the agenda? There has been an amendment since it was first published concerning a closed session at the end of the meeting. Any modifications? Or is there a motion to approve the agenda as it stands?
So moved.
Moved by Kyle Shipp.
Seconded.
Seconded by James Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Under citizens matters tonight, our interim manager, Hazen Blodgett, will speak now on the GFL contract, our solid waste contract.
Sustainability, they have used compressed natural gas trucks since 2012. Will from time to time have substitute diesel trucks. So now. I don't know about that chart. But they did mention that right now they're still working out of operating route. So it's good to see them. So press, right? So sounds like a partner. Very large company, 31 states. But I can answer any questions for me about the contract. We are operating over that one right now, and like to figure out a push forward.
Just before we get to questions, they said they can't hear you on Zoom. So I don't know if that's okay. No.
We'll go forward then with questions. I myself was wondering, the prior manager discussed the possibility of picking up yard waste. And I didn't know if that was still something that the board wanted to consider, or whether the, I believe the size of the cans was a question as well. Do we know what the contract currently looks like?
Yeah, so the board does have some options. It will cost more money. And they also would like to do a 5-year extension. If we start to go into these areas, they want, they got to be able to recoup some of their costs. But if we went to a larger recycling bin, from a 65 gallon to a 95 gallons recycling bin, the cost would go up $3.75 per container. And they in this email I've got is several months old, but they'd like to start in January 1st, 2023. Now, I don't think, my guess is that was, back in June when this thing was originally discussed.
Hazen, that's per container per month?
It is per month.
Okay.
Yeah. The second, so that's one option, 65, you'd still do it every other week. The other option is to go to a yard waste collection, and that would be every other week, a 95 gallon container, and that would cost $2.48 per container per month. And then the third variable, I guess, in there is, what about doing recycling every week using the existing can? And that would cost $6.88 per container per month.
Versus what is the current rate?
I do not know the current rates. Those are increases from our current rate.
So I think in terms of the yard waste, I know basically we do it now in the operating budget, but not a separate line item with the guys driving around. And I think that we're going to have to look at that, at adding additional staff to continue that service, or not doing that service anymore. So, I think the yard waste pickup is a good alternative to that for the cost. And I realize not everyone will take advantage of it. Not like everyone takes advantage of it now. But I think, from the services we can provide as a town, and for the safety of our workers out there, picking that up, moving it multiple times. I think I think we should stop the roadside collection after, some notice by our staff. And I think that the GFL is a good replacement for that. I think we'd probably find that the cost is cheaper if we looked at the cost of personnel driving around every day doing that.
What would we do about larger limbs, such as we had this past cycle because of the hurricane? Hopefully we won't have a hurricane every month, but I know that the request had been to be able to chop it up so that it fit in the 95 gallon.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of homeowners that might not be able to do that.
Yeah. Right. And I think we would still do leaf collection like we do in the fall. So that's separate with the vacuum. But I think, even if it was just we kind of need them chopped up for our guys to handle them also. But, if there was a limb or two, that is all they were left picking up that they see on the side of the road. I think that's a lot better than, picking up all the leaves and everything like they do now.
Other thoughts?
I'll just mention, I think I brought this up at the last time. I'm not in favor of the third container in people's homes. And that would be the debris and yard stuff like that. So here we are in the 10th month. I don't know why we don't just wait and revisit this at the next budget year. Continue like we are, if that's possible, to the next July.
It's a good question. So the contract is a 2-year extension. So I assume you could approach them next fiscal year, let's say in May or something like that. But I think their answer could be, well, let's just wait until, what's that going to be? July of 24, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think more likely is if you want to delay it, you'd consider it in July of 2024 as revisiting as the example of yard waste.
And sorry, go ahead.
But so right now we're waiting, we have to have a contract in place now.
We're operating without a contract.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess from my perspective or staff perspective is I think the board needs to approve a contract. If you want to keep it the same, you can do that. Or if you want to make some changes, obviously you can do that too. But I do think, well, right now we're operating without a contract. So we're operating on good faith.
Well, let's schedule that for one of our work sessions upcoming. There has been a proposal to make is it the first or the second meeting into a work session each month?
Either meeting's fine. I don't, did we say from a planning standpoint, I would say the first meeting, is the first meeting okay? Does that disrupt planning? Okay. I would recommend first meeting of the month.
The work session and how is that structured?
Well, it would still have an agenda and we'd put this on it, but the work session would give us the opportunity to have more true discussion into more complex problems. And then they could be, motions would still be made and decisions would still be made. Do I understand that correctly?
The board certainly has that right to do that because I'm sure there's things going to come up that you can't wait till the second meeting. But the intention would be to really have a more casual atmosphere or environment over at, let's say, town hall, and folks are around the table. So you're getting more to and fro questions and answers. And then the idea would be to get the issues out, and then the board, or either you can resolve them then, the board could resolve them at that first meeting, or the staff's got clear direction on, okay, here's what the board, staff's got clear direction, here's what the board would like to see us dive into further and get more answers.
I think that's good. My only comment on that is that we sort of set the standard now of broadcasting on YouTube and having that archive. So even if it's a different table arrangement here,
Yeah.
I think we need to continue that. And
That's
have
a good
that
idea.
available.
Yeah.
Or have a better conference room at town hall, which I'm also in favor of.
Yeah.
All right, very
So,
good.
Yeah, in terms of work sessions, I'd be concerned about cutting back one of the normal sessions, but I've long been thinking that we try and pack too much into our twice a month sessions, and that work sessions would be beneficial. 3-4 years ago, we did them very frequently for the additional elements and for other really complicated policy matters. We did quite a lot of work sessions. Not that I really want to pile on more, but I do want to give the appropriate amount of time needed to get through our work without feeling rushed. I do want to touch on a couple more things about solid waste, and that is to revisit this question of the colors of the bins. So I did confirm with the state, basically it's the State Office of Waste Reduction within the Department of Environmental Quality, and they said, yes, it's quite commonplace to have custom wheeled carts custom colors, custom embossed, or to have the town seal or the name of the town. It's very common for that to be a requirement of the contract. Of course, that could be an additional cost, or it could be required as a part of the contract with no cost. It needs to be discussed. The comment on colors that was delivered to me by the station chief, section chief of the Division of Waste Management is that the entire recycling industry for 30 years has been striving to get towards some uniformity. Blue being recycling or green. And I think what we have now is blue for recycling. And that any movement away from that color scheme is going to be confusing to people who are coming from afar, who are already accustomed to a blue bin, and to our own citizens. So that's one point. And there remains the aesthetic concern. I think that sticking with the brown and the green, or brown and blue that we had with waste management before it became GFL is preferable. And I think that if GFL wants to extend the contract renewal from 2 to 5 years, I feel like that's a necessary concession that needs to be discussed. So.
Mayor, are we discussing this evening, or are we moving it to a work session?
I think we're moving it to a work session.
That's
And
fine. I
and
just wanted to put that on the record again.
I do have one question though for Mr. Blodgett, if I may. Basically, operating without a contract, how does that jeopardize the town of Pittsboro?
I did talk to the gentleman. I mean, we did not talk about what they would do if, what could they do? But we're still 2,100 customers. We're not a big customer, but we're still 2,100 customers. We're paying our bills on time. It's not a best practice, that's for sure, not to have a contract. But I think in this case, they're not going to abandon us, whatever, November 15th.
All right, thank you.
all right.
So Mayor, I would like to, because it helps staff to clarify what we're going to talk about in the work session. So it sounds like the color of the cans is one issue. And then what are the other things y'all want to talk about so we can get you good information?
The yard debris.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, this is the second meeting that we've talked about this. I don't share the concern about the colors. And we do have a mix now of both for recycling. So I don't know. I think we need to go to the larger recycle bin, and I think the cost for that is reasonable, but we see a lot of overflowing recycle bins. And then I guess if we're going to discuss it further in a work session, then we could see if we could get some type of guess at how much we spend picking up yard waste, with our personnel now and the vehicles and things like that, and what that delta would be.
Then I would, to Commissioner Farrell's point, could a person opt out of that third container if they wanted to, if we went that route?
In my experience in these contracts, no, because it makes their contractual responsibility. They still have to run that same truck, right?
But storage
So,
is a concern,
they-
right? If
they
somebody
don't-
lives in a townhome and there's a pad already poured.
They
for
don't
6
have to have the
months.
container, but there's no cost difference.
Fair enough.
Right, we're still going to charge them. Yeah.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Well, all right. So next is my update, and it's twice a month I go to either Zoom or to Chapel Hill and do the WCHL Chatham Roundup, and it's a lot of fun to do the radio program. It's about 15 minutes long. Andrew Stuckey lives in here in Chatham County, and he always is very primed to know what's going on around town. So if any of the commissioners wish to take my place one Tuesday, I'd be more than glad to have you do that. I started listening to the land use discussions with the various groups this past week, which were very interesting, but I ended up not being able to stay on those calls as much as I wanted to. But those were going on with the stakeholders in the community. Upcoming, there's a breakfast with the Boys and Girls Club on Thursday, I believe it is. And I look forward to that tremendously. And as for general concerns, I was at Town Hall during the hurricane, and a very lovely lady came and knocked on the back door and was concerned about her safety and the storm, and her power was out, and it was a very poignant discussion with her, because she's alone, and she didn't know when the power might come back on. Of course, none of us did, and she was trying to decide whether to go to a hotel or whether to stay in her home. I'm afraid that all of those were questions that I couldn't answer, but I think that for future kinds of things like that, I know we now have a public information officer, but I think that as far as people who might need a little extra attention, senior citizens, the disabled, children, the kinds of things that maybe we want to take a look at as far as a protocol is concerned. I also have to report to you that the compressor at the Wheeland automobile dealership and repair shop, we're making headway. I went and talked to Mr. Wheeland a week or so ago. He's now enclosed the noisy compressor, but even despite those changes, we have gotten additional complaints about the compressor running at night or weekends when, so we're continuing to work on that, and that will complete my report. Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I could not attend the Chatham County Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. I had a scheduled conflict, so I was unable to attend that. In reference to the Triangle J Council of Governments, that meeting was held, and more so, they were talking or discussing moving to another office or expanding that office, but the current office or the current location. However, there is going to be a regional summit again this year for 2022, and it's going to be held Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022, and this is Triangle J Council of Governments Regional Summit. It will be held at Dorothea Dix Park in Raleigh, and from 9 a.m. until 2. And you do have to register for that. The theme for that summit is Minding Our Minds. So that should be very, very good. And if you're interested in attending, certainly you would need to register, and I will forward all of you all that information. And it is again a public forum. So any of the public can attend as well, as long as they register. So I don't have anything additional. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bonitz?
No reports, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Farrell?
I don't have anything other. I spoke with Katie, possibly the Johnson Trust Fund may be having some more monies coming in for some more benches. I will contact you, Mayor, with the information, and she can get with Katie and Mr. Gene Brooks. As far as the PBA, the meeting's Wednesday. I'll be there Wednesday morning.
Very good. Commissioner Shipp?
Yes, the EDC meeting was rescheduled, so I did that on September 28th. There is lots of activity that they don't tell us about, other than there's lots of activity, but there is still a few hundred acres left in Moncure at the tip site, and there's almost 1,500 acres left in Siler City. So there's a lot of opportunity out there still, even with what has been announced already so far. And I was also I was out of town, not able to attend AHAC either. So we'll get a report on that. The next EDC meeting is October 18th. And then for concerns, really just signs around town. This season is a particular blight on signs, I think, because of politics. But I know there's been some changes in signs in our UDO and things like that. Maybe once the campaign season settles down, we take a look at that and see how things are. But it's not just campaign signs. It's also, all kinds of other advertisement signs and stuff. I know our code enforcement used to remove those. But I'm not sure where our authority stands in that now with the UDO, but I don't think it's something we should attack now until we get all those political signs out. And that's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Vose?
Other than to say that TARPO meets Thursday of this week and the Arts Council meets next Tuesday, I have no reports.
Thank you. Next, we have our public comment period, and Dan Sundberg has signed up for that this evening. Dan is the chair of the Chatham County Historical Association Board and would like to speak tonight on an issue. So if you'll come up here, Dan.
Thank you. My name is Dan Sundberg. I'm a landscape architect. I'm the chair of the Chatham County Appearance Commission, as well as the Historic Association, registered landscape architect here in North Carolina, owner of United Biospheres, a landscape architecture firm, and co-owner of Red Sun Farm, past member of the EDC, as well as the Rurtons and several other. I'm really involved in Chatham County, which is why I'm here tonight. I think what you are doing tonight is important, so I wanted to come out and give a few minutes of my time. The Chatham County Appearance Commission members who contributed to the list you're going to look at tonight include myself, Aaron McDade, Davis Andrews, Clinton Miller, Kim DeMonico, and Tony Meyer. Our vision and direction for our work initially began with the intention of becoming the interim guidelines while the UDO was being contracted with Chatham County. We were going to have an interim set of guidelines that we were going to replace with the ones that were there. But now the UDO has picked up the pace. So now what we're doing is going to be directly integrated, we're told. As a commission, we're aware of the overuse of certain species of plants due to the limitations of the current plant list. And I saw that as something that could happen in Pittsboro if things didn't change. And I'm glad Mr. Shipp has taken the initiative to work with me to get the list back and forth. Our work is now anticipated to be included in the Chatham UDO. So I'm trying to talk Siler City as well into this list. Our highest priority is to adhere to the goal of retaining Chatham's natural character as noted in the Chatham County Land Use Plan. That's been our #1 goal all along. The plant list functionality. The plant list is divided into natives, cultivars, and exotics. Invasive plants are excluded. The intention is that some areas would primarily planted natives to enhance or fill gaps in existing plant stands, such as along roadway corridors to screen parking lots or other things that are not attractive. A percentage of cultivars will also be stated to be allowed to enhance the native plants because using only natives severely limits the variety of plants which can be used, which causes monotony and monocultures. Other areas, such as planned areas of heavy growth depicted as nodes on the land use plan, will allow a heavier use of cultivars and exotics for the higher ornamental impact typical of urban growth. Lastly, areas around buildings and within the site itself will allow the highest percentage of exotics to be used in addition to the natives and cultivars. These are for public enjoyment and could include plants with double flowers, fragrance, seasonal interest, and a larger list of low-growing evergreens useful for around buildings and within islands. The use of this plant list will encourage the production of a much wider plant palette on an ongoing basis. It will also contribute to the cohesive and sense of place for Pittsboro as well as Chatham. Our plant list references include a list of native woody plants specifically set aside or picked by the Chatham County Cooperative Extension Office, Matt Jones. His list was based on Dr. Steve Frank's research and was reviewed by Dr. Barbara Fair. The top 25 native pollinator plants from North Carolina created by Debbie Ruse. The NCSU College of Design's recommended plants for NC Piedmont created by the Rural Learning Initiative. The NCSU Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox, heavily used for obtaining individual plant characteristics and requirements. Hillsboro's plant lists from their UDO. The landscape architects and plantsmen serving on the Appearance Commission right now, and the invasive plant list from the NC Invasive Plant Council list for the Piedmont. These were all a list of the resources we had. This wasn't, a random list. This was carefully culled. And the most important part, I want to emphasize, the most important part of this is there's a public misunderstanding about native landscapes. If you specify only native landscapes, you will have a very limited palette of plants that will fit very specific conditions. Now, a very easy example is if you're looking for a low-growing evergreen, there's maybe 2 or 3, one being dwarf yopons. Other than that, there's very little low-growing plants that people can use that would be outside the plant list. The cultivars, and I'll give you an example of that. A cultivar would be a genetic adaptation or a sport which came from nature or was genetically bred by the plantsman. And a good example of that would be a dwarf wax myrtle. Everybody loves wax myrtles on our plans. That's one of the plants we saw on the plant list a lot, along with dwarf Burfords. The dwarf wax myrtle is one that only gets 3 or 4 feet tall. It still has the same fragrance when you walk by it. It still has the same beauty. It still has the same inherent characteristics and benefits to the environment. These examples can go on. Another would be the many cultivars of the black-eyed Susan or rudbeckia that are lower growing so they don't topple over in the breeze. They're easier to walk by. They have bigger flowers. They're still single flowers, so they're just as useful for the bees and butterflies as well as people. So I wanted to get that misconception about I think a lot of people think when they're thinking of plants, they think of natives and then everything else. There's this big, broad band of plants in between called cultivars, which fill this enormous gap. Red buds, everybody likes red buds. There's probably 40 red bud species I can list of different red buds. They're weeping, ones that have different colors of flowers, ones that have more flowers, ones that have different color leaves, ones that have different attributes in the fall as far as color. And these plants should not be excluded from the plant lists within counties and towns. And right now, in large part, they are. I'm here to encourage you to adapt the list that we've put together. And this list has been poured over. I can't even count the hours we've put into developing this list for your use. We've developed it. It's got a category for evergreens. It's got the sun, the deer, everything else you would need to know. As on the Appearance Commission, we're hopeful that the county will let actually the landscape architects and engineers have this plant list to put as an Excel spreadsheet into their computer, and they can mine what they want. If they want all short evergreens, they can bring all the short evergreens up to the top so they can pick from that list of short evergreens and not have to go through the many pages of plants. So it'd be incredibly useful from that point of view. I wanted to share some of the other stuff that our mission as the Chatham County Appearance Commission is. Our mission, preserving the rural character and lifestyle of Chatham County by promoting context-sensitive design that preserves rural and small-town character by encouraging the inclusion of architectural features that resemble historical structures and local vernacular. Preserving historic structures and unique natural features of sites such as streams, wetlands, floodplains, rock outcroppings, steep slopes, and upland pools. Preserving native trees which are of significant size and historical value. Promoting naturalistic landscape design which is sustainable, low maintenance, and achieves a rural aesthetic. Conserving natural resources by retaining and protecting existing forest and native vegetation to preserve the site's natural ecosystem, services, and reduction of soil erosion. Minimizing fragmentation of wildlife by preserving and connecting forested and open space areas within and across sites. Becoming more resilient by mitigating, responding, and adapting to emerging threats. Encourage low-impact development and green stormwater infrastructure techniques, which reduce the impact of flooding from stormwater runoff, moderating the effects of climate change by retaining and protecting concentrated areas of existing forests and native vegetation, reducing heat island effect by requiring higher paved areas, larger paved areas to be shaded. This is an important one, requiring adequate soil volumes in parking lot islands so that the shade trees planted will be able to grow and thrive to the maturity to their intended canopy. Also fostering a healthy community, increasing access to healthy food. This is something we're trying to do by promoting the use of plants that produce edible fruit and nuts in landscape plans, reducing dependence on vehicles and promoting a healthier community by encouraging walkability with and across sites through sidewalks, trails, and greenways. And then lastly, just on the buffers and screening, the purpose of vegetative buffers around perimeter of a site is to retain the rural character of Chatham County and to preserve mature, healthy, existing trees and other native vegetation. These requirements do not intend to remove existing stands of trees and native vegetation to plant immature species or maintain healthy tree stands. And this is almost comical. Some plants we've gotten in where they've showed areas to be completely destroyed so they can plant the mandated buffer around their site. And if you're not careful, if you have in your ordinance where it's one tree every 5 feet on center, that's what you'll get. And it'll look like any other town in the US. You have an outstanding chance to make Pittsboro really special. It doesn't need to be the same. Don't start from a plan that's been adopted by so many other communities and towns. Start from scratch. I'm going to put one plug in here. This is my own. If you ever get the chance to look at form-based code, which is where you draw the picture of the town the way you want to see it, and then you write the guidelines around those pictures, you will end up visualizing exactly what you've drawn, and that's what you'll get. And I do appreciate your time a great deal. I'm totally encouraged by everybody's enthusiasm to not just to hold to the same, but to make things better. And I sure do appreciate everyone here for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Sundberg. All right. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda? Either approval of it as stands or the removal of an item that needs additional discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. The next matter is the public hearing for the UDO amendments, and Janie Phillips is joining us, I'm sorry. And she's joining us to go over the various amendments to the UDO.
Thank you. I'll just leave it brief, and because it is a very long document, and I know I've had some questions about it. So that's just how I'm going to open it up. If anyone has any questions about anything in it or needs some more clarification.
I'd just say procedurally, of course, Mr. Sundberg's comments were meant to be part of this public hearing. So how do can we do that? Open the public hearing and include his comments?
Yes, why don't we do that? Let's have a motion to open the public hearing. And were you volunteering to do that?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Shipp. So to open the public hearing, and is there a second to Commissioner Shipp's? Seconded by John Bonitz. And that motion would also include the incorporation of Dan Sundberg's comments for the purposes of this particular public hearing. Those in favor of this, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Sundberg's left already. I was going to ask if you would consent to having his written comments submitted for the record.
I'm sure we can. Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Janie. Were there things that had been questioned or calls that had been made to Janie that had been that need to be supplemented at this time?
I think just the only thing to kind of complement what Mr. Sundberg said is that this came up probably about 6 months ago on Facebook where all things happen, I guess. And there was a comment about it that Pittsboro should only allow native plants in our UDO. And so I said, we already do that. Look at this. It says right here, we only allow native plants, and then got connected with Dan and he said, that's not what you should do. And so worked with him over the last 6 months to get that, to get those updates included. And they had already been working on it with the Appearance Commission. And so then connecting with Janie and they got it incorporated. So just encourage public participation and it can make a difference and we can make things better.
Was there a sign up list for the purposes of this public hearing? And if so, was anyone signed up? No? Okay. Additional questions for Janie? If not, then is there a interest in closing the public hearing portion of it and voting on the land use plan consistency statement and the ordinance to approve the text amendments that are proposed?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Seconded by
Second.
James Vose. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. The motion carries unanimously. Now, we have been supplied a land use plan consistency statement and ordinance to approve the text amendment by the planning department. And is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp. Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Janie.
Oh, no, thank you.
Our next business is old business, an update on the sewer force main project. Kent Jackson, I assume, is on Zoom with us. And Kent, are you with us?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Board. So yes, I did want to give a brief update on the Sanford wastewater infrastructure project. So on Sunday, yesterday, the two contracts were advertised for construction bids in the News and Observer, and will subsequently later this week on Thursday, I think it is, be advertised more locally in the Chatham News and Record. The ad is also on our town website and bid opportunities. So certainly very excited to be able to bring that news this evening. As far as the schedule going forward, the next kind of target date on October 25th, the consultant and staff will have a pre-bid conference at Town Hall Boardroom to answer questions from prospective bidders. And then the bid opening date is scheduled for 2 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 8th. So we are eagerly hopeful to receive those bids on November the 8th. And, at that point, I'll be able to make some recommendations to the board shortly thereafter. I think the other thing I can add is at the end of September, the consultant, Wooten Company, on the town's behalf, did make an application to the Division of Water Infrastructure for a construction grant, $10.5 million to supplement the funding for the project, as we anticipate, with everything, with the bidding climate, that the bids may be slightly higher than anticipated. And the last thing in form update. Just prior to his leaving, Mr. Kennedy had sent a letter to the local government commission and the Division of Water Infrastructure requesting that the town's loan that was approved a number of years ago be increased as allowed in the administrative code. And that loan increase request was approved last week by the local government commission, which increases our loan approval amount to 26 million, like 26.5 million is now our approved loan amount. So we were excited about that news as well. And so glad to bring those updates and here to answer any further questions the board might have.
Thank you, Kent Jackson. Are there questions for Mr. Jackson?
Great news. It's been a long time coming. And when do we expect we'll hear on the grant from DWI?
I anticipate hearing that in the first half of January.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Further questions? Kent Jackson, thank you so much for this update. It's as has been said, we've been waiting a long time for this, and it's very exciting to think we might be underway.
Yes, it's very good news.
All right, to new business then. Hayes and Blodgett, you are going to give us a discussion of the adverse weather policy.
Yes, Miss Mayor and Board. So we recently reviewed the adverse weather policy. We have a new HR director, Jennifer Eakes, and we noticed some things we'd like to improve on that. And that basically boils down to that right now, when we make a decision to close early, and it's no issue with the employees, we feel like it's safer. We don't have the ability to pay them administration leave. A lot of our competitors do it. Chatham County, there's a union memo lists Durham County, among others. And this is for non-emergency employees. So police officers, when they sign up to do work, they know, look, I got to come in when the weather's bad. That's true with some of our utility employees, but with some of our administrative staff, we'd like the ability to say, look, this is through no fault of your own. We're making an executive decision. You need to be safe. And then we would compensate them with administrative leave pay. So we're recommending approving the changes and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Blodgett? If not, is there a motion to approve the amendment to the policy?
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin, seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. For the next two pieces of business, I believe, Teresa Thompson, are you going to lead us in a discussion of sponsorship funding requests?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. The Rotary Club is requesting a sponsorship from the town of Pittsboro to assist the costs associated with the Pittsboro Street Fair event on October 29th, including the temporary street closure. Costs associated with the police presence is estimated to cost between $2,600 and $3,200. A breakdown of the reasoning is included in the memo. And staff recommends approval of the sponsorship request for up to $3,200 for the Pittsboro Street Fair event, as this money is necessary for the event to occur. And we do have Kathy Russell here with the Rotary Club, if you have any questions for her, and let me know if you have any questions for me as well. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kathy. On behalf of the town, we're very grateful for Rotary's interest in carrying this tradition forward. And are there questions for Teresa by the board?
As a point of clarity, is it up to 3,200 or is it 3,200?
Up to. It depends on if overtime is going to be required for some of the police officers.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Is there a motion or additional questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And one more.
The Pittsboro Business Association is requesting a sponsorship from the town of Pittsboro to assist in the costs associated with the Christmas tree lighting. That would include the temporary street closure, costs involved with setting up the tree, removal of the tree, decorations of the tree, and removal of decorations of the Christmas tree. So costs associated with the police presence is estimated to be between $4,360 to $4,838, same reasoning, depending on if police officers are going to require overtime that week. And the cost to set up the tree, to install the lights and decorate, removal of the lights and decorations and removal of the tree is $2,012.50. The invoice or the quote for that is attached to the memo. And the cost associated with electricity is estimated to be approximately $125. So again, staff recommends approval as this funding is necessary for the event to occur. Someone with the PBA was going to try to be on Zoom tonight if you have any questions for them. And please let me know if you have any questions for me.
Does this include the cost for DOT to shut down the street?
So for DOT to shut down, I don't think there's a cost
Okay.
specific to that, but there is to pay outside agencies to assist with Pittsboro and then also having to pay
Okay,
Pittsboro staff.
okay, I'm glad for that clarification, because for years I had thought that DOT actually charged us $6,000 for the privilege of closing a highway. But what that 6,000 is basically a round number, approximate figure for the cost of police in order to effectively shut down and safely shut down the street?
Yes,
That
sir.
is-
No one's mentioned anything about DOT charging anything to me, but I can confirm that. But Shorty's shaking his head no, so I don't think it's
Well, I'm
required.
not aware of any charges.
Good, all right, thank you.
All
Teresa,
right. Are there-
Teresa, I know back in June, we approved some funding for Summerfest that ended up not being able to happen. Did any of that money get used or what's the status of that?
Based on conversations I've had with the PBA, some of the sponsorships for the Summerfest agreed to carry over to the Christmas tree lighting. So some of the funding for the Summerfest is going towards this event as well, from what I
So
was told.
does that include the town? Because we approved about $6,000, I think, at that time for Summerfest from the town. What happened to that money
Was that for Police-
Summerfest?
police presence or,
I think there's a whole list at the time provided by PBA
okay.
in that case.
I was not given a list of everything that was provided for Summerfest that carried over to I wasn't given a budget or anything like that specific to this event. I was just told that this funding is needed for these items, that they do not have the funding for it.
So we don't know what happened to the town funding for Summerfest?
So we can check into that. What if we checked into that and reported back?
Okay.
Okay.
From what I was given information, cost for the event, not including the street closure and electricity, would be approximately $8,875. So whatever money carried over from Summerfest and whatever other sponsorships was given, that's what's going towards the other costs involved, so minus what's being requested tonight would be around $8,875. So the PBA does have that.
Okay, but I guess I don't really want to approve an additional $6,000 in funding if we don't know what happened to $6,000 in previous funding. My impression is that they didn't use it because the event didn't happen, but
Is there anybody on Zoom with PBA who can answer Commissioner Shipp's question?
Madam Mayor, I don't have any hands raised from panelists or attendees.
Would it be agreeable to state that that any excess left from Summerfest that can be applied to this balance be approved perhaps by the manager? Is that something that you would feel that you could do after investigating the issue of the leftover funds from Summerfest?
Just to clarify, so if the board wants to approve up to whatever the number is, well, I'm trying to figure it out. So what you want to do is us to check to see, did they spend any of the money and where's it at, right?
Correct.
And that should, if there's any unspent dollars, that should be deducted from the request.
yes.
When's the date of this?
And
What's
if
the
there's
date of
not
this?
unspent funds, then I'm curious where that $6,000 went for an event that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
Maria Parker Lewis texted me that she cannot get on the
okay.
Zoom for some reason. So I can call her and put her on speakerphone if you'd like, or if that's,
Would you like to
As well.
clarify it at this time? If
Or-
Maria
or we
Parker
can bring
Lewis
it-
can do that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think this is something we should fund,
we should,
but
yeah.
I don't know why there's so much, why it's confusion about the Summerfest. So,
so I was looking at my watch. I was just texted that they did not receive any money from the town.
If the
Okay.
funds were, approved by you to pay for the police, and the police didn't have to do anything, so therefore the money was not spent. So,
but I was just curious because I thought they did set up and then had to take, I didn't know if there was some funds spent, which is okay.
well,
But
Heather would probably be the one to answer that.
okay. All right.
That's exactly right. Just because y'all approve it, they have to spend the money and send us an invoice, right? That we, well, I don't know if we pay off the invoice. We'll find out. We'll have
Okay.
to find out what our procedure is.
Yeah, they're saying they didn't receive any money.
Okay.
From the text from Maria.
So any leftover funds carried over and an explanation of the funding from Summerfest that was unspent. In addition to the approval, is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the funding request that any carryover from Summerfest be applied to that, and that accounting for the funds allocated for Summerfest would be forthcoming. Okay. And I believe we had Commissioner Shipp. Did we have a second on that?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
No,
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one comment, sorry, related to that. I think that, I know Chris is working on this and there's been some talk about our special event policies and stuff like this. I think this is potentially the appropriate way to do it, to bring it to us like this, but I think we could have more clarity in terms of, who's sponsoring the event. Like for the Fall Fest, for example, it's a town event that the Rotary puts on for the town. I think that the tree lighting is a PBA event that they put on for PBA. So I think just a little more clarity on these events going forward and, for everyone involved in agreements, things like that.
Yes, sir.
And as I recall, there was an issue about the timing involved in the approval by the board. So I think that if things could come, I know Christmas seems a long way away, but it, the earlier we can make those approvals, the better.
Yeah, that's a good point because the Summerfest request came on June 27th.
Yeah.
For Summerfest. So.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Teresa. Katie Keller? Katie will speak to us about the application for the Rural Transformation Grant.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
So I would like to preface this that this is a very recent grant that we found out about, very recent. So this is the Rural Transformation Grant. It is done by ARPA funds. This is something that you can apply, applicants can apply for up to $950,000. It goes to downtown, many different areas that you're able to apply for. Our specific category is the community enhancement for economic growth that overlaps with a little bit of downtown. It touches on downtown. It also touches on neighborhood restorations. Many of the projects that we have, one stuck out very much for us, which is the Lewis Freeman Memorial Park. That is something that has been, a priority, and that given the design, that what we would do is take the design that was given several years ago, have some minor modifications done to them based off of what the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has requested that we've discussed and voted on, and apply for this grant in hopes that we can completely implement that. So I'm here today to ask if you have any questions and to ask for the support for us to be able to apply for this specific grant.
All right. You've heard Katie's introduction. Is there a motion to direct staff to apply for the Rural Transformation Grant to develop the Lewis Freeman Park? Moved by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin.
I'll second. And just one question
Yes.
before. What is the total cost for that? Is the revised cost 950?
So here, this is where we're having a very quick turnaround time with this.
Mhm.
So I do not hold me to this number, because that's one thing that we are going to hopefully get within the next, our deadline is November 1st. So we are really trying to work hard, and Teresa has been amazing to help assist with writing some of these things. But ideally, with the modifications that we're doing, it was $650,000 4 years ago. So with some slight modifications of bringing in the boardwalk a little bit, and some other additional ones, including public access, I would say around $750,000 is what we would apply for.
Okay, so this is up to.
Yes.
950.
Yeah, it's up to $950,000. I can't give we wanted to wait for the approval. This is very recent that we
Sure.
found out. So until we get those construction documents in, I won't have an active price.
Okay, and I know we've allocated either 100,000 or 200,000 over the last 2 years to this project.
Mhm.
So it'd be great to get a grant instead of using that, and it'd be great to see progress.
Agreed.
So, Katie, excuse me, go ahead. Well, our grant we will ask for the 950 though, correct?
So we will ask up to $950,000. I'm thinking more of $700,000 to $750,000 that we would do. It really depends on what the construction documents come back for.
But couldn't we use this for other opportunities in our parks if we had the 950?
It has to be solely to Lewis Freeman, and you have to show the architect's designs and the construction documents specifically for that site.
Okay.
Mr. Bonitz?
Yeah. Any cost share to this?
I'm sorry,
Any cost share requirement to this?
it's funded in full.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
And are there any that you're aware of? Well, if it's ARPA funds, maybe this question is moot, but are there any positives or negatives about going back to the well a second time
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand your question.
for future requests? Is there any perhaps bias against awarding to town for a second request?
From what I was reading, as long as you're showing the progression of that you have spent, I believe it was $700,000 And that has been shown that there's been significant progress on that you would be able to apply in the future as well.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about the backsides of Hillsborough Street. Anything that the downtown vision plan indicates needed for major, not facade. What's the opposite of facade? Backside. Yeah, thank you.
Further questions for Katie? You've heard the motion by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Vose, to direct the staff to apply for the rural transformation grant to fund Lewis Freeman Park. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Great work. Thank you.
Kent Jackson, we're ready to hear from you now on the designation of a truck route alternative. Are you still with us?
Yes. Thanks again, Mayor. So my starting point is that, of course, the board has recently made some decisions related to the reassignment of the route for US 15501 to an acceptable parallel route within town. And so it's the interest of staff not to reopen that decision or revisit that decision in any way. However, we have received some feedback from NCDOT about some additional information that they would like to see in the resolution that was recently passed by the board on September 12th. So that is our objective tonight, as well as to kind of summarize some of the considerations that have gone into the deliberation about this over the last short time period. And so Morgan DeWitt is in the audience and will be presenting a short PowerPoint to highlight some of these, and certainly we'll both be available for questions.
Thank you. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. I'm not sure who has the computer that's the screen, but I have a PowerPoint presentation to give us a little more information about the truck route alternatives. Do y'all know who has the computer?
If you'll give me just a minute, I'm trying to get it pulled up.
Oh, okay. I thought it was someone in here. But just like Kent said, we're not trying to revisit something that you've already agreed on. We just felt like it may be more beneficial to you for y'all to have a little more information about the advantages and the disadvantages of 87 versus 15501 as the two truck route alternatives that we were looking at.
Give me just 1 second. I apologize. How about now?
Yeah, thank you.
And just let me know when you want me to go to the next slides.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is the North Carolina and the National Truck Route Network map that shows the town of Pittsboro and what the routes are. US 15501 currently allows for all types of trucks, and US 64 business, it's very small at the bottom, but it does allow for some trucks. Excuse me. It's for any tractor trailers 53 foot or less, they're allowed to travel on 64 business. So as of right now, all trucks are allowed to go through downtown. And I think that's why this is being visited. So you can get to the next slide, please. So just wanted to touch on where funding stands for the two routes that we've been looking at. For NC 87, there was some funding originally set back in 2019 for the STIP project, but for the 2022 update, that project is no longer funded, and that was just for some widening work on NC 87. And as y'all all are aware, Chatham Parkway has been accelerated. So the north phase should be completed in the next 2 to 3 years, and the south phase should complete the entire route around 2027. So that map is changed a little bit, but that just kind of gives you the overlook of the two options for the truck route alternative. And you can see that 87 has a part of it that ties on at the bypass at 64 and then goes around, while Chatham Parkway offers more of a bypass around town, starting further south and connecting further north above the bypass. You can go to the next one. So looking at 87, there's some advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, the biggest advantage is that the road is existing and we can go ahead and get the process started now. If we did want to relieve downtown of some congestion. There are several disadvantages as well. It is more of an indirect route. Whenever the traffic circle was being constructed in the last few years, that was a designated detour route. And as everyone probably has seen, the trucks did not really utilize that as they should, because it caused a lot of damage to town roads and streets that we had to deal with. But it's an indirect route, so it may be harder to enforce to keep trucks on it because it is a little longer. The improvements did not get funded in the STIP. There are lots of impacts on residential communities on that route to consider if you're going to make that a truck route. It also travels through CCCC, the public library, the senior center. There's a lot of things to consider on that route that people may be impacted. It is a 2-lane facility with limited capacity as opposed to Chatham Parkway, which will be 4-lane divided. And there are very few sidewalks on this route, something to consider when thinking about trucks and pedestrians and trying to keep them separated as much as possible. Next slide, please. So looking at Chatham Parkway, there are a lot of advantages to this route. It is more direct. It bypasses the majority of town with multiple connections. It is a 4-lane divided facility, so there's plenty of room for the trucks to travel. There is going to be street lighting on the current stretch and then on the proposed as well. There is a 10-foot multi-use path that is proposed for the entire route that will allow for more separation on the trucks from pedestrians and cyclists to keep them, more safe on that route. And the biggest disadvantage is really just the timing. So it could be 4 to 5 years before the southern phase is complete. So that, that's 5 more years that we would have with congestion downtown. So that's really the biggest disadvantage with that route. Next slide, please. So just something to think about. The biggest thing here, choosing between the two routes really is timing, but the designation process is also a pretty timely process. There's 2 things that we have to apply for, and one of those is to submit the route designation request to DOT, and that starts with the resolution that y'all passed at the September 14th meeting. And that kind of starts the first phase where it's reviewed with DOT staff, and that's approximately a 6-month process, and there has to be public hearings, traffic assessments and all that with that. And then after that, it goes to the Board of Transportation for approval, which can take another 2 to 3 months. And then from there, it goes to AASHTO with FHWA for approval. So it can take more than a year to get through this process. So that's something to consider when you're looking at the timing. But in addition to the route designation request, we'll also more than likely have to make a route deletion request for the current route. And then also depending on how you want to handle a 64 business. And that's a similar process that I believe can go at the same time as the other one, but it's both going to be a timely process with both the state and the federal agencies. Next slide, please. So really where we are now with the next steps is we need to, now that you have a little more information about the 2 routes to choose from is where we want to move forward. If you want to stay with 87, we have a resolution for that, but we will have to revise that. And Ken and I can work with DOT to get the appropriate language in there that satisfies them, and we can bring that back to you the next meeting if you choose to go that route. Or if you feel that Chatham Parkway would be the best option, then we would need to approve a resolution for that route, and we can initiate that process when appropriate. Also, in the resolution that was passed in September, it mentioned 64 business and that you may want to delete that or a portion of that. But I wasn't exactly clear on what the intentions were there. So I think if we could just kind of gain some clarity on what you want to accomplish with 64 business. Because right now it's not a main truck route, but trucks are allowed up to 53 feet through downtown. So if you wanted to request to delete the segment through, downtown Pittsboro to not allow those on a primary route, we would need a resolution to move forward with that request as well. So I know it's a lot of information, but it's just kind of, I feel like, it would be easier for y'all to have a little more clarity on the options that we have moving forward with the 2 truck routes. And DOT has expressed that they prefer to only have to do this one time. So there is an option, possibly to do 87 and then, a few years later go to Chatham Parkway, but they strongly prefer not to have to do that just because it is such a long process and you have to involve the federal government as well. Does anyone have any questions
from Morgan DeWitt?
So I have preferences about DOT also, but I won't bring them up. I guess I didn't understand that we had to, or it's new information that we have to reassign 15501 to 87 in order for it to be a truck route.
Yes, so it is a general statute that if you reassign the truck route, you have to reassign 15501. So if you choose to move forward with NC 87, then NC 87 will be the new US 15501. So the truck route travels, it's with the route, not the pavement. So if you choose to make, you can't say the truck route is going to be 87, but then say you want the new 15501 to be Chatham Parkway, because that contradicts the general statute.
So could we designate a section of Highway 87 as 15501 South? Because my concern here is that I don't think this is a binary choice. I don't think that we need to be pressing ourselves to think of this in a binary way. I think that the truck traffic is, there's as much of it coming down West Street to turn south at the circle, and actually quite a bit of it that goes around the circle to head west. But my interpretation of this memo is that it seems to suggest that Highway 87 is not an appropriate truck route, or is not useful, or we shouldn't even be thinking about having trucks there. Whereas I think that's a part and parcel of the entire effort to get trucks out of the downtown circle, is to utilize Highway 87 and indeed revisit the STIP, have it returned to the STIP, and get it reprioritized so that traffic, when it comes from the new campsite over in Siler City to the TIP site in Moncure, or vice versa, that traffic doesn't have to go through the circle. That project was on the priority list, I think, since before 2019. And it was removed in 2022, even though there were other projects in the prior STIP that were still on without funding. So I think we need to do something to meet immediate needs and future needs. And I'm not sure exactly how to phase that. I very much appreciate the analysis y'all have put into this, but it doesn't seem to be relevant that there's no pedestrian facilities on that section of 87, for example, because we know that, and we knew that, and that was why it was on the STIP, was to hope to get a true complete street from Al's Diner down to Highway 92, or all the way down to the intersection with 15501. So those are my immediate thoughts. I think it's both and. Obviously, we need to do something to attend to the DOT's insistence right now for greater clarification.
I would like to add that regarding the mega sites, that DOT is proposing to make 421 an interstate. And that is designed to primarily take traffic from one mega site to the other, utilizing 64 to 421 to then US 1 bypassing Pittsboro. So hopefully that will relieve some more from
That is very
from
helpful.
NC 87.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Well, I think that, DOT has been DOT has delayed the update of our comprehensive transportation plan that we've asked for. So that I feel like would be important information if they were to actually update that for us. But also I'm just really confused about the 15501 needing to move that for a truck route, because in northern Chatham County and in Orange County, there's restrictions on trucks on 15501. So those two pieces of information don't jive with each other. And this is new information this evening. So I'm really confused why we would have to redesignate that when in another part of Chatham County, there's restrictions on trucks on 15501.
Do you know if they're full restrictions or do they
They're not.
restrict partial?
Yeah, they're partial
Okay.
restrictions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can submit a request to make it semi-restricted, like 64 businesses now. So it may be to that extent. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it says STAA vehicles with NCDOT approval letter.
Okay.
So it seems like you have to have specific DOT approval to drive on that section. And I don't really see large trucks on that section either.
Right.
So that might, maybe that's another option for us. But this is a little more murky now, I think, than it was, unfortunately.
Excuse me, maybe I'm oversimplifying the issue, but it does seem to me the intention here is to try to get truck traffic from downtown. You're backing out, and Chatham Parkway may be a better solution. I don't know, but it's 5 years in the future. And in my view, I would suggest designating 87 as the truck route so we can get that ball rolling and get the trucks out of downtown. Just to give additional information, we did talk to DOT today, and he softened up on this revisiting Chatham Parkway in 5 years. He wasn't as adamant as I think they were originally, and maybe it depends on who you talk to too. But so if we go 87 now, that doesn't, based on the conversation we heard this morning, it doesn't preclude us from going 15.5 or going Chatham Parkway 5 years from now. And that's what I would recommend to do. The STIP, that's a good question about money coming out of the STIP. I do know the state ran out of money and did value engineering across the state, did severe cuts. But, if the town wanted to make it a top priority going forward, we could try to get money back into the STIP for NC 87.
I think that's what I would like to see, with the idea that I understand that the DOT's strong preference is to do this once, but the growth that's coming from Chatham Park is unprecedented. So, yeah, I think we can push on that a little.
And my concern about using 87 as alternative is the widening of that street and the effect it's going to have on those homes that's sort of close to the road. So 87 would be a good alternative, but again, my concern is those the residents there, and they, as I said, they are pretty close to the street.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin, I very much appreciate you raising that concern. I share the same concern, and another reason why I'm so frustrated that it was removed from the STIP, even though previously it was on the STIP unfunded. I don't know why, again, I don't know why it couldn't stay on the STIP unfunded. The east side of 87 between 902, between 902 and Alzheimer is essentially unpopular. There are a couple of residences in that last block, maybe 3, 4. But the section from Pittsboro Elementary School down to 902, there's only the church and the entrance to our park. And so this is another reason I kind of feel there's an urgency there. If we could get that engineering done, they can respect the west side of the street and do all of the improvements on the east side of the street.
There's a church, and then there's one house, so across from the church, then there's another home there, and then you do run into quite a few more residents. But either way, you still have to widen the whole entire street. So that's still pretty close.
I mean, so back in June, and then we approved it in July, based on discussions with DOT that we were going to move 15501 to Chatham Parkway when it was complete. And then on September 12th, we said that we would designate 87 as a truck route, and that was based on information from DOT. And then now we're getting, different information from DOT that we have to redesignate 15501. So I'm not sure what has changed, in the last 2 weeks from the information we got from DOT. And then my concern about redesignating 15501 closer than 5 years is if that affects funding for projects that are already approved. If those projects are funded because they're 15501, or if they're funded because it's a good thing to do for Hillsborough Street. And that's a bigger concern I have. Hillsborough Street is the approved project right now.
Oh, right, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm thinking too far ahead.
Yeah.
Does the solution lie in another meeting with DOT now that we have this conundrum that has come to us, or Commissioner Vose's representation and Teresa Thompson are before the TARPO this upcoming week?
Or Ms. DeWitt, are you doing TARPO now?
Yes.
Okay. Is your meeting this week?
I still have.
Morgan, I have one question. On this first step, where it goes, NC DOT State Traffic Engineer for the six, is it a possibility that they could turn down the 87 truck route?
Yes, yes. So they will do, so in that first step, that 6-month process, there is a public hearing or it's open for public comment. They do traffic safety assessment. They'll do just an analysis of the roadway, vertical, horizontal alignment, make sure it's appropriate for trucks. Now, they did do a lot of that for 87 when they were doing the traffic circle project to make sure that it was a suitable detour. So DOT did say that they were confident that it would be fine based on that assessment, but they would have to go through that process. And there is an option, I guess, for them to deny it. But because they just did that analysis not that long ago for the circle, that would be unlikely.
I kind of feel like town manager has spoken, that moving forward this 87 and revisit, the Chatham Parkway in 5 to 7 years, because we may have quite a bit more people and traffic and all down through there. But, DOT could be a change in administration too.
It might take that long.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I thought that we already did that. So that's my question is why do we have to move it? Can we restrict trucks currently on 15501 like they do in northern Chatham and in Orange County? Why do we need to redesignate 87 for it to be the truck route? What changed in the last 2 weeks on that guidance? And then if we move 15501 next week or ask for it to be moved next week, does that affect the funding of the Hillsborough Street improvements?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess those are lots of good questions. Obviously, we don't have the answers now. What I did hear the engineer say was he felt like 87 was the route based on what action y'all took, but the ask wasn't as clear as they wanted it to be. And if if 87 is the route this board wants to take, then we can send that to them in a clarifying letter and they can move forward, making it to truck route. As I understand it, Morgan, if it's got a US designation to it, US highway designation, I thought maybe they said you can't regulate truck traffic. But, so I guess I'm just new to this area. I do think it's smart to get the traffic the trucks out of downtown. But if the board wants more information, if you all want to direct us, table this and direct us for more information, but you know, it's on your agenda to designate it as a truck route, and DOT supports it. And they'll go through the process of getting it done. And he said 6 months. So I don't know if it's going to take a year, but he said they'd go to ASHTO in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd want to clarify what's not clear, because we resolved to formally request the DOT to prohibit trucks. I mean, it's pretty clear to me in the resolution what we were asking for. I guess the difference is we have to reassign 15501.
Right. So DOT said that the resolution specifically has to request that we reassign or relocate US 15501. So we have to allow a full access truck route north to south. Whether, you know, if that's through town or through 87, that has to be the US 15501 route. So we would have to relocate the name of 15501. So the other locations that you mentioned, you know, I'm not sure, but maybe are you aware if they have an alternative to that?
I don't know. I was just looking at the truck route map from DOT, the North Carolina Truck Network, and it shows restrictions on 15501 in Chatham and Orange counties. So,
okay, because I know typically they can allow restrictions, but they still have to designate an alternative that's full access.
I mean, there's other smaller roads around that, I guess, but there's not a designated truck route around it.
Could perhaps you draw a list of questions and submit them to Morgan, who could perhaps get some clarification at the TARPO meeting upcoming? Commissioner Vose had said that he is in the process of joining TARPO, but that it is so far he's not been able to speak to people about policy issues at that meeting. I'm assuming that you have made that breakthrough.
I know that TJ Cock has had some turnover and there's just been a difficult transition. And I think that was probably about the time you have come on. So I have not, this would be my first meeting.
Okay.
As representing the Pittsboro.
Well, Matt Day from Triangle Cog was so approachable and when I served on the TARPO board, he made a huge difference in understanding the vast bureaucracy of DOT. But with him not being there, perhaps is there a new person that is taking Matt Day's place, or?
Yes, there is a new person,
Okay.
a new staff. So we can reach out to her and try to find out some more information.
Would you like to formulate your
Sure,
particular questions?
I can do that.
With Morgan, and then maybe we can get some movement at the TARPO meeting next week. Okay, this week, Thursday.
And so do we think it would be feasible for staff to return in 2 weeks with the revised resolution? We can reapprove it with those edits to meet DOT satisfaction?
We can do that. We would need to know which route you would want to move forward with.
I don't think there's any question that the 87, except for Pamela Baldwin.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Then my concern also is with school traffic that's over on 87 as well. And that's some heavy traffic also. So to me, there's a lot of concerns there. So there has to be some type of alternatives viewed or at least reviewed in terms of what the effect for the schools. And I'm sure the chief can talk about how heavy that traffic is over there, because it's horrible. So it's a lot of things which also need to be looked at as well. So that's one of my concerns too.
I think that's what their analysis will do, but we can clarify too, if that,
Right.
those steps of analysis, if it looks at those items.
Yes, thank you.
Morgan, I have one other question. It's been several years ago. It was before our transmission line was put in. And a gentleman had spoken to me and said, and I can't remember, it could have been 15501 or 64, but are both of those federal highways or just one? Because he told me that if it's a federal highway, that we could not designate or keep trucks officially out of downtown.
So they are both US routes and
Okay.
you can't completely restrict trucks off of a US route, which is why we have to move 15501.
And then that, okay, gotcha. That would be a designated 15501, not 64.
Right, the route stays with 15501. The truck route would be 15501. It's just where do you want that to go?
Okay. Thank you.
I very much appreciate NCDOT's desire that they not do this more than once, because every single one of those signs has to be repositioned into new locations that makes them as legible. And there's probably a whole lot more complexity that I'm not aware of, but Morgan DeWitt, I thank you very much for taking note of these questions and taking them to NCDOT and coming back with a solution. And I'm also glad to know that you're now on Tarpo, and wondered if you had heard my thoughts about the speed limit question on Hillsborough Street, which is a different matter, but.
I haven't.
You hadn't heard my.
I mean, I know that you had made requests for studies and that there had been studies done, but that's about the extent of my knowledge on that.
I'll drop you an email, and it's the concern remains. In fact, I've done a little bit more looking and just happened to notice when I was driving into town from the south, from our town limits to the circle on Sanford Road, that's all 35, the entire section. And there are fewer driveways there than there are from Bonitz up to Powell Place. So, yeah. The section of Hillsborough needs to be 35. And however, NCDOT needs to get their heads wrapped around that. I'm eager to help them in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. So Commissioner Shipp, if you'll get those questions to Morgan, then perhaps we'll have an answer by the time next meeting comes then. All right. Okay. Cindy Poindexter called me this past week, and Chris Kennedy has previously been the town of Pittsboro representative to the Chamber of Commerce. And so the question before us tonight then is, do members of this board have recommendations about a new town representative? Cindy Poindexter gave me the names of the people who are currently representatives from Siler City, Golston, and Chatham County. And they are all men, and it would, not that I have anything against men, but it might be an interesting thing to think about a female, perhaps a female person of
I
color.
agree 100%. I agree 100% with that, Mayor. I think you two should decide.
We can do that, can't we? Can't we, Pamela? Jay? How about we bring some suggestions back at the next meeting? I believe that a big event is this week, the chamber meeting. I know Hazen, you had asked if board members were going to that event. Are you going to that event?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
It's Wednesday morning here.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I remember looking at my calendar. I'm booked, but I usually do try to have that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will table this for further consideration then by Pamela Baldwin and myself.
I'd say Mr. Farrell. His leadership is needed.
All right. Under miscellaneous then, we have a status update by the planning department for the land plan update. And who'll be bringing that to us tonight?
Jamie.
So good evening, everyone. Again, there's been some questions that planning staff has received about, rezoning properties and everything, and we're going through this land use plan update. So I know the mayor was on a few of the stakeholder calls, and we've done quite a few things. So I just wanted to share just basically what we've been doing so far and kind of open it up for discussion in case you all wanted to know more about what was going on and what we have coming up moving forward. So. All right. All right. So far, our timeline, May 12th, the contract was signed with Stewart. July 13th, we had a kickoff meeting with staff and Stewart, and they also went around and did a tour of the town. In September, we had our first steering committee meeting. The attendance wasn't that high because we had scheduled it the week before, I think, but we did have a quorum, so it was a lot of good discussion. September 30th, we distributed a survey, which we're leaving it open until November 8th or November 10th, I believe. And so if any of you have emailed me, I have it in my signature line, and we also have it online. And I requested our staff to also put it in and also send it out to a lot of people. So if you get that pushed out, that would be great. On Friday, I asked Stuart how many responses we received, and so far it's been 97. So hopefully it's over 100 now. So if you just keep pushing it out, that'll be great to get more responses. And we're potentially trying to work on getting it translated into Spanish as well, so that it can be more evenly distributed. October 3rd and 4th, we had our stakeholder interviews with various different groups, and those were very profitable as well. We do have a makeup day, so if you know anyone that did want to speak and couldn't make the 3rd and the 4th, that's October 21st from 9 to 10:15. And if you want them to just send me an email, I can forward that invite over to them. So for the upcoming timeline, our next steering committee meeting is October 18th. And then again, we have the makeup stakeholder interviews on the 21st. Sometime in November, we'll have a community meeting to go over the proposal and what we have done so far. November 15th, we have a 3rd steering committee meeting, which will also be the last one, the last scheduled one. And then December to January, we'll talk with the consultant and kind of tie up some loose ends with the land use plan update. And then it should be coming to you all in January of 2023 for a discussion, decision, and hopefully adoption of the land use plan update. So what to expect with the existing land use plan? This question was brought up, kind of, are these going to work in tandem, or is one going to go away, or what's going to happen? So we have a land use plan and we're updating it. So what we have now will essentially be going away, and it's going to be replaced with this new one. And so rezoning requests during this time as well. Like I said, the contract was signed in May, and I did have a couple of items that came to you all, and it was the assumption, and also with the previous town manager, about future requests coming up to, we can't not accept a complete application, but it is difficult on our end to present it because part of a rezoning request is making sure it meets the land use plan. And so our current land use plan, some of the stuff doesn't meet it. So people can apply, but we're also updating our land use plan. So it's kind of a weird situation with a lot of requests that have been coming in. And since it is such a short time period that we're updating it, staff has been suggesting to just kind of hold off. And we understand that can be kind of detrimental to some people, but also it's a lot of back and forth. So, and we need to know as staff as well, a direction and how to tell people too, because we want to best direct the citizens as well. We don't want to tell them one thing and then they contact others and they're telling them something different, because that can get confusing. And then the updated land use plan, again, that's what is going to replace what we have for the existing one. That's pretty much it. Do you all have any questions or any kind of points that you want us to bring up to our consultant that you think might not be covered, or have any questions about it?
Could we zip back for a moment to the second or third slide back, I think? Oh, yeah, there we go. I'm good for right now.
Okay.
Just one comment on that. When do we expect to set the date for the community meeting so that we can advertise it?
I assume we'd probably use the regular statutory requirements, 10 to 25 days. We just don't have a specific date yet. So that's why it just says November 22. That's what's on our anticipated schedule, which is on the website. So I'm sure we'll get a date set for that very soon, probably at our next kind of follow-up call after the steering committee.
Okay, I would just encourage us to stretch the statutory requirement there to get more, participation. And if that can sort of be 2 meetings on the same day or extend from the business day through the evening, potentially, to get 2 different groups of people there potentially.
So we do have a contract with them, and the contract's very specific about the number of meetings and the types of meetings too. So it also, I think it just has the one community meeting in there. I'd have to revisit it. But if we had to have another one, then we may have to look at the contract and see if we need to adjust something.
I mean, I think it'd be okay if there was cost, but if we could do, 3 to 6 or 3 to 7 or something like that too, just to span a time that people would come. Yes, not AM.
Okay, I'll write that down.
Suggestion.
Okay.
We're talking about the numbers of meetings.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. And then I think when we originally saw this, it was December decision. So how can we help meet January?
So I think January is pretty decent right now. I think as far as staff side goes, we anticipated it to get pushed some already. And the reason it got pushed the first time was because the steering committee hadn't been approved yet.
Mhm.
So that pushed us into a month, and especially with the holidays too. It's just going to work out better to push it into January. And that part we already cleared with them. It shouldn't mess with the contract at all.
Okay, great. And then I think just a concept for this is, and I've said this before, like it seems like a big deal because we haven't done it for 10 years or more, maybe, but 10. Okay. But I would hope that we do this every 3, 4, 5 years going forward, particularly with the growth that we have. So even though it is a big deal, it's not as big of a deal as we're going to do it before 10 years. And so if there's, and we can do it, we can change it obviously with every rezoning that we do. So, let's get good and not perfect and get it done. Is my comment.
Right. I think one of the big goals is about obviously the sewer and water situation. So hopefully as long as that gets handled, then that is realistic. But another thing is too, that would be really helpful for the town is to actually have a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So I think, in my professional opinion, that would kind of be the next step, which would be a much larger overhaul and combine the Parks and Rec master, the transportation, utilities, and even bring in the conservation. Like the grant that we're doing right now is supposed to help with the conservation part of it.
Yeah. And I appreciate staff too, kind of blocking for us on rezonings.
Yes.
I mean, and like you said, anyone can turn in a complete rezoning and bring it to us, but this and sewer capacity are some of the reasons that we've, not approved recent rezonings. There may be an edge case out there or a middle case that is, is obvious what would happen with that rezoning with, outside of this process, but I think it's best, if we see what happens in this process before we, so I know it's tough on you guys to explain sometimes, but appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have.
Well, we all have a vested interest in being able to move things along. And I think that this board needs to know, and I think we talked about this today, Kyle Shipp, that after a while, stalling the rezonings for whatever reason, whether it's because of the land use plan or the sewer issue, is going to come back on this board, and the constituent frustration probably needs to be addressed so that, or at least talked about so that it doesn't come back as a criticism to the board. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. The next thing on the agenda is a closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11, Part 3, to consult with our attorney. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now, is there a separate room set up for us as there has been in the past? All right, then we will adjourn to closed session in that room. We're back in session now after having closed session. So the matter that this was discussed in closed session, we would like to have back on the agenda on the 24th of October. And for definitive action at that time. And anybody that would like to contact potential members of the Board of Adjustment would be fine to verify, so that we would have a full board perhaps by the time we get to October 24th. All right. So that is the end of our agenda. Are there any closing remarks that the board members would like to make? If not, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The motion is by Mr. Bonitz. We discussed as we were walking down the hallway that the motion to adjourn is the only one that does not require a second according to Robert's Rules of Order. However, in thoughtfulness about the way we have always closed our meetings, is there a second to Mr. Bonitz's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Good night.
Good night.